Yeah, welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast live. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate you. What we're going to do here, we got some pretty interesting topics tonight. You can see my man G is back with us. Definitely glad to have him. We got some pretty interesting topics for you tonight. Going to talk mostly NBA, and then we're going to finish it out with some NFL. But before we get to that, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And finally, make sure you write it down, put it in your phone, set an alarm, do whatever you got to do to remember. Saturday nights at 7 p.m. we are live here on the Format Podcast, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in, talk to us, get at me. I love it. I can't wait. All right, so as I mentioned before, we got my man Genius back. Definitely glad to have him on the scene. What up, G?
Bruce, had a little sound hiccup there. How's it going, man?
I hear you, brother. Man, it's going good, man. It's going good. Definitely glad to see you, man. Love your perspective. So always good to have you back on the show, brother.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. So if you're coming in the chat, make sure first and foremost you give us that like. Definitely appreciate it, and let us know where you're coming from. But we are going to go ahead and get started. Only got one in here, but hopefully we pick it up soon. But let's go ahead and get started. First topic, Coach Tom Thibodeau and the New York Knicks. And this was an interesting topic to me, obviously, because the New York Knicks they're going to Game 7 tomorrow against the Indiana Pacers. And they have the opportunity, if they win this game, to be in the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 1999. I want to say that was the Allen Houston, Latrell Sprewell group that eventually lost in the NBA Finals to San Antonio Spurs. I think that was a lockout shortened season too, if I'm not mistaken. And that was Tim Duncan and David Robinson's first championship together. And I think, the first championship in the Spurs dynasty. So this would be the first time since then. And the Boston Celtics are obviously waiting for the winner of this Pacers and Knicks series in the Eastern Conference Finals. But there's been like a lot of, I'm not going to say controversy, but a lot of questions around Coach Tom Thibodeau and how he's handling the Knicks, and if his coaching style and the way he does things, the extreme shortness of the rotation, and how hard he pushes his guys all season long and all of that, if that has led to some of the injuries that we're seeing with the Knicks, and if that is putting the Knicks in a position where he's grinding his players too much, playing them too many minutes, and it's, putting him in a position where they won't be able to capitalize. Because as we know, the NBA playoffs is a 2-month long season of its own. So if you've been grinding them tough all year long, and then you continue to grind them, you got these guys playing, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hartenstein, and all these guys are playing like 40 minutes plus in the playoffs, and that's crazy. There's been a number of games where Josh Hart has played 48 minutes, and he got a little nicked up, right? He got a little nicked up in the game yesterday. And so people are wondering, and they have been wondering, is it Tom Thibodeau? Is his way of doing things ever going to lead to success in the modern NBA? And I think I mentioned this last time, that in the anonymous player survey conducted by The Athletic, Tom Thibodeau was voted by the coach that they would least like to play for, and that's because of his grind mode mentality. So let's do this. I want to get some commentary from first from Mike Greenberg from ESPN Get Up, and he's going to talk a little bit about that coaching style. Then we're going to hear something from Knicks star Jalen Brunson, and then we'll come back. We'll get G's thoughts, and then we'll go from there.
So I don't know that the criticism is totally unfair. This is Tibbs we're talking about. And again, I say this with love for the guy. He worked here at ESPN when he was in between coaching jobs, and I came to really like him. I feel like I know him and like him a lot. But I can tell you what tree he is from. He's from the Pat Riley tree. Now, it might be indirect. I'm not sure if he ever actually worked for Riley, but he worked for Van Gundy, who worked for Riley. Jeff Van Gundy I'm talking about. So and I'm going to tell you a story now that I'm old enough to remember when people used to say Pat Riley's Knicks would run out of gas because he played them so hard and worked them so hard. And I remember covering Bulls-Knicks series in the early 90s. And on the off days, we'd all go to practice. And the Bulls would have a walkthrough and a film session. One day, Phil Jackson decided they're not even going to practice. He took them all on a boat cruise around New York City. I'm not making this up. Phil Jackson, on an off day between games in New York, took them on one of those boat cruises around to look at like the New York City sights because he felt his team just needed to get away from it. In the meantime, Pat Riley was running 2-hour practices during the playoffs, working his guys into the ground, which is right. I don't know that's the reason that Phil's teams always won those. The main reason they always won those was that they had a guy who wore the number 23. But what I'm saying is Thibodeau comes, he came by this honestly. That's his coaching DNA. That's what he learned. You play your guys. You work hard. You let the chips fall where they may.
All right, G. So let's get to you, and then we'll hear from Jalen Brunson. What are your thoughts on this? You, as somebody who played up to the collegiate level, what type of coach worked best for you? And do you believe in the coach that's a grinder and works his players super hard all the time?
So first of all, let me start here. I think for a long time, this has been the first time we've seen a competitive game this late in the season, right? Like Game 7, we got 2 Game 7s going on, both the West and the East. But I'm gonna concentrate on the East for a second because, if the Knicks win, then they'll probably have to face the Celtics, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably have to face the Celtics.
Yeah, they will.
And so when you look at coaches, like I think Tibbs is trying to put his team in a position to actually win the entire chip by like making sure that they stay conditioned, they stay focused. But in terms of like coaches and what coaches work for me best, I've had all of them, good, bad, and and probably the worst, right? But I think the toughest coaches were the ones that kept you going, right, all year long. You just training all year because you're constantly getting better. I think his team is young enough to where he can run them to the ground, and because of how the league is set up with the multiple, I think if you look at it now, like you get like 2 or 3 games off per game. So if you do play 48 minutes, you got like a day in between your next game. So the play is it's in the player's favor to have those days off, but it's also in the coach's favor as well because now they can recreate. They got time to recreate and plan for those next games and pretty much what they saw. That's why you see the 7-game series, right? Some of them are lopsided, but yeah, when it comes to coaches, I played for Charlie Moore, Herman Haree, Ken Tyler, others, just to name a few. Some of them was good, some of them was bad. Well, I shouldn't say some of them was good, some of them was bad. But some of them, they focused on conditioning early in the year. And then when the season started, they kind of backed off. And it was more coaching versus, conditioning in the middle of the year or load balancing or players playing 48. Your stars are going to play the whole game. Just they might sit for a second in the playoffs, but they're going to play the whole game. The entire season, the reason why they get to sit as much as they do, because they know if they make the playoffs, they're going to be playing the entire game. And so I think
isn't there something to be said for getting yourself in that prime condition and making sure your body is ready to be able to handle it, because the playoffs are a grind. We know they're more physical. We see that the refs are letting more physicality go. And again, if you make it all the way through, that's 2 months of basketball you're playing. So,
yeah.
I mean, isn't there something to be said for having your body ready by going through a tough regular season? For instance, if we in the clip that we heard from Greeny, he talked about Pat Riley coaching the Knicks, right? So remember, before that, Pat Riley won 4 championships with the Lakers, and everyone looks at Showtime run and gun, but what they're not realizing is the way Showtime played, the type of condition those teams had to be in. And if you go back and you read books about the Lakers, or you read books about Pat Riley, I've read a couple, or books about Magic, they'll tell you Pat Riley was a taskmaster in terms of the physical conditioning piece. And they even talk about it in Miami. Shaq talks about how when he left the Lakers to go to Miami, Pat Riley, I think, made him lose like 60 pounds. And all these guys that tell you how there's weekly weigh-ins. I think I heard Eddie House talking about that. So Pat Riley has always been very much on guys being in peak physical condition to be able to play the game at a high level and to be able to take the punishment that the game puts on your body. And so I'm not so sure why it's such a big deal that Tibbs is doing it this way, because I think also part of it is his mentality, right? Obviously, he's not a glamorous guy. He's a tough guy. He believes in defense. He believes in rebounding, all the things that take a tremendous amount of energy for you to do, right? You know this better than I do. It takes a lot more energy to play defense hard for 48 minutes than it does to try to be an offensive guy for 48 minutes. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, if you hear Meta World Peace, he talks about when he used to play and he was in the NBA and he's doing his drills and stuff like that. He said he would do defensive slides for 30 minutes or an hour before he even ever picked up the ball to try and shoot. And we know what type of defender that guy was. So I don't know if it's how much the game has changed today or how much the players have changed today or the mentality is different or what, but I don't see too much issue with the way Tibbs is going about it. We know it's an old school mentality, but I don't know.
Yeah, the game is definitely, the one of the biggest knocks on the league. I think it was the teams were playing too soft. The defense intensity wasn't there. People
Mhm,
wasn't boxing out. And so,
mhm,
anytime as a coach, you see those things as red flags, and you don't want your team to do that. I think that's why the Knicks are where they are right now, is
mhm,
because they had a coach that come in and say, "Hey, look, we're gonna play defense. We're gonna defend the ball. We're gonna put,
mhm.
we're gonna outwork you, so to
Yeah,
speak." And the only way to do that, you have to. The culture hasn't been like that since probably Pat Riley, or
that's right.
so
Right.
so. Knicks fans love it, right? I was a Knicks fan. I'm in and out, depending on the year, but
Right.
I'm not ashamed to say that. But yeah, I think it's good basketball, especially for the East. The East has been like the easiest walk to the finals, and
Yeah.
now
Oh, wow.
yeah, and I think that's why you're seeing some of the subpar superstars stay in the East for as long as they have,
Mhm, mhm.
instead of back in the '90s, or I'll say the early 2000s. The way to go was through the Mamba, right? If you went to the West, it was a different style of basketball. You knew it. You knew that every game mattered. I think there was like five. I don't want to get off subject, but it was probably like the difference between getting to the playoffs was like 5 games, right, in between
Yeah.
the first.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah. So it was always extremely competitive. The West was
Mhm,
always extremely competitive, and that's why everybody wanted to go there. That was after Mike left.
mhm. Yeah, I
So
agree. I agree.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see that we have these matchups. Really good basketball right now because it's been washed. It's been a wash at times. But yeah, they got a good chance. They got motor to do it. I don't think 48 game every other day is going to really kill anybody, right? Like you got, at this day
You
and
got an
age,
old school mentality, clearly.
yeah. I know.
That's all good though. I'm not mad at
Yeah,
that. I think
which
about it the same way.
yeah,
So it's funny that obviously in that clip we heard Greeny brought up Pat Riley and you talked about rebounding and defense. And again, everybody thinks about Pat Riley and the Lakers and winning 4 championships with Showtime. But what they don't realize is Pat Riley was the guy who coined the phrase no rebounds, no rings. And for the life of me, again, I know it's a different game now. I'm totally lost as to why there is such less focus on rebounding in the modern NBA. It drives me nuts when I watch some of these games. But this is how, with limited star power, the New York Knicks have been able to stay around. Like you see games where Isaiah Hartenstein has like 10 freaking offensive rebounds in the game. These guys, they really, really hit the glass. Now they didn't do it so well last night, but they've got game 7 coming up and we'll see if they can dig deep and fight their way out of there and get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But they really do play like an old school team. So yeah, it's interesting to see. But let's hear what Jalen Brunson had to say following the loss the other night against the Indiana Pacers. And I thought it was interesting, especially when we juxtapose it with what we're talking about now in terms of the short rotation and guys getting hurt and all that. Let's hear what Jalen Brunson had to say.
There are a lot of things that obviously physically don't go our way with our team this year, and but I think our main focus is that whoever we have out there, regardless of what you're dealing with or anything, if you're out there, you're ready to go. And that's just been our mindset. And so, yeah, Josh asks us to come out, but he comes back in and gives everything he has. And so, I mean, when working at Asheville for a teammate. And so I just, no matter what the situation is, we're going to have each other's backs. And, yeah.
What, kind of on that note, what you know of Josh, what would you say about his status for Game 7?
I mean, I would assume he's playing. It's Game 7.
I love his mentality. I love Jalen Brunson's mentality. I would assume he's playing. It's Game 7. Like, none of that. And he seems to sound like a competitor. You know, like we're going to get out here and we're going to do what we got to do, and we're going to play and we're going to try to make something happen. And I love that.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely looked like he was locked in for a long time now. Just as appearance on that still photo that you had. It looked like he's
yeah.
I was like, hey, bro, yeah. So he you can tell he locked in. Like that's the look of somebody that's locked in.
Right.
And it doesn't look like he's making them hit the weights as much as we think. So
that's true too.
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to touch on, back to Greeny's comments earlier in this segment when he was talking about Pat Riley and having the New York Knicks undergo 2-hour practices in the middle of the playoffs. Meanwhile, Phil Jackson, he knows how to kind of let his guys take it easy and when to back off and all that. But again, that's just Pat Riley's mentality as a grinder. I think he was a coach's son, and he played at Kentucky. I think he played for Adolph Rupp, and then he played in the NBA for the Lakers. I think he won 1 championship as a player. Obviously, he was never a superstar, but Pat Riley is that kind of guy that he had to fight and grind for everything he had. And so Greeny brought up, you know, do some people think that Pat Riley's mentality and the way he really grinded his teams, does that have anything to do with the fact that they didn't win a championship? And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, like Greeny said, a big part of them not getting past Chicago was Chicago had that guy wearing number 23, right? Michael Jordan kept a whole lot of dudes from winning championships. So I can't attribute that to Pat Riley. And then when Michael Jordan wasn't there, he breaks through in 1994. And unfortunately for the Knicks and Pat Riley, it wasn't that they didn't have anything left. It's just that Olajuwon was that much better than Patrick Ewing, and the Rockets were just a little better as a team. Olajuwon locked up Patrick Ewing in the finals and had him at 36% shooting for that entire series. So, you know, that was that. Looks like we lost G for a second. Hopefully he'll be back here with us. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna go ahead and got a couple people in here. So I'm gonna open up the phone lines and see if we can get any calls in regarding Tom Thibodeau's coaching style in the Knicks, and if you think that maybe the way he coaches them so hard has something to do with you know, the difficulties they're facing and the injuries and so on and so forth. So the number is 904-219-8264. 904-219-8264. All right, you go ahead and call in and let us know your thoughts on this topic.